Maybe a number of other misconceptions need to be kept in mind. Any kind of significant, meaningful, and ultimately productive human activity has, let's say, principal intended results, has its main thrust, and then it also has byproducts, as it were, spin-off effects and products. And so magic and the magical art came to be judged by some of these spin-offs, and people will say, doesn't magic have to do with casting spells? You know, or as the joke which I tend to repeat on Halloween at the Halloween program, which I like to preside over, you know, how does a witch invite you to her house? She says, come in for a spell, you know. That goes with the other one, you know, how does a witch drink tea? From cups and sorcerers. No. It's getting worse, so I better quit now. I better quit now. But let's say isn't it true that magic has to do with the casting of spells? Isn't it true that magic has to do with, at one time, you know, it was very, very popular, with the discovering of buried treasure. So that was a big deal. You know, I tend to come back again and again. I don't know why, especially in recent months, I seem to be haunted by the figure of the Mormon prophet Joseph Smith. I don't know why. Joseph Smith, for instance, the prophet, back in the very early 19th century, that's how he started out. He was a rural wizard, young rural wizard, who was going around the countryside up there in New York State making magic rituals to help people find buried treasure. Well, I don't think that anybody got terribly rich as the result of his magical spells, but eventually the situation changed, and then he came to discover, so he said, those famous tablets from which he wrote the Book of Mormon and all that sort of thing. So the magic changed, you know, into something a bit more archetypal, and certainly led to the founding of a great religion. In any event, you know, there are all of these sort of, I would call them somewhat trivial feats of magics, spells, whereby one tries to influence other people, the finding of buried treasure, or whatever other, we also have to include healings of physical ailments. These are all byproducts of magic. These are not the principal thrust of magic. There are always byproducts that arise. Divinations are connected with them too, glimpses of the future, one thing or the other. But they were never the essence of magic. The essence of magic was the increase of consciousness. And other things kind of accede to this sort of thing. You see that nowadays too. You have phenomena like the so-called New Age and things of that sort. In the New Age phenomenon, of course, also, you know, you have really, no matter how much fun I make of those things and so forth, really at the back of it is the drive, the desire for the increase of consciousness. That cannot be denied, that's what it is. But soon it's diverted into these little magical fiddle-faddles, the byproducts, how to influence people, how to get rich, how to get healthy, how to get a new girlfriend, how to get a new boyfriend, you know, and then pretty soon, before you know it, that's what you are involved in, and that is a problem. That one needs to guard against, But trying to cut the long story short now, let me now jump from that a minute to the religious image, because these things are all very greatly connected. There is no religion worth its name without magic. And there is no magic worth its name without a religious dimension. Without wanting to reminisce a lot or brag a lot or name drop a lot or things like that. I've known a few pretty good magicians in my days, and again, I don't mean Penn and Teller. I don't know those guys. They're too rich for me. But let's say one of them was the late Dr. Francis Israel Regardi, whom I respected very greatly, and who was a very great and a very nice man, and probably one of the principal really serious writers and expositors of the magical tradition in our time. And Dr. Regardi always said that a magician who allows his efforts to become trivialized will have to be satisfied with trivial results. And it's absolutely true. So that it is very, with anything that involves ecstatic and altered states of consciousness, it's extremely important to have the right intention and to carry through with the right intention. And that right intention should not be neurotically colored and should not be egotistically tied up, but should go and should have the willingness to go beyond these things. But of course it can be said, well, you know, what's wrong with being a little bit egotistical? After all, why shouldn't we benefit ourselves? Well, you know, there is no reason why you shouldn't benefit yourself. But when you apply it to these deeper and involved processes of consciousness, if the psychological point of gravity of your intentions is all within your little self, then what you will experience will be in large measure confined to your little self. You are not going to get beyond it. It's only when you let go of that that there exists a likelihood of going beyond it. Once again, I don't, maybe I shouldn't, but I will use an analogy, and hopefully before I'm done I can show you why the analogy holds true in certain ways. Of speaking of an other kind of magic, let us say, such as the entheogens or psychedelics, which have come to our culture since the 1960s and so forth. If somebody is primarily concerned with his or her psychological foibles and complexes and little preoccupations and difficulties, and then takes a reasonably powerful entheogen equals psychedelic, then the chances are, not always, the chances are that that's where that person is going to spend the time of the altered state of consciousness, because that's what they wanted to do. But if somebody is open to something greater, if somebody asks for something greater, in an altered state of consciousness by whatever means induced, then at least the door is open to something greater. But you know what? In order to come to something greater, you first have to have a reasonably firm idea. I don't use the term belief in this case, but let's say a conviction that there is something greater. If you are convinced that there is something greater than where you are now, then there is at least a possibility for you to come to something greater. But if this is all there is, and you are really convinced of that, and you hold to that, then the chances are very, very great that this is all there ever shall be. And if that's the case, and you can quote me on this, then that's the best reason for suicide that I can think about. If this is all there is, then I might as well get out of it as quickly and as painlessly as I can. See, that's the big trouble with our culture, that when all is said and done, most of us, most people,